The year was 1942. Mahatma Gandhi gave a call for Quit India, a movement launched during the Second World War, demanding an end to British rule in India. Right after that, in 1943, the Bengal famine was wreaking havoc. It was a man-made famine, a consequence of British policies during the war. It resulted in about 2 to 3 million deaths in India. A lot was happening. Many students in India found themselves asking the same question: what can we do for our country? Among them was a young man, M.S. Swaminathan. He belonged to the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. His father was a doctor. Swaminathan wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, but after the famine, he gave up the plan. Instead, he began studying agriculture and went on to become a legendary scientist, a world-renowned agronomist. He is hailed as the father of India's Green Revolution. It completely changed India's agricultural landscape. Today, he took his last breath. He died at the age of 98. While the entire country grieves his death, we must also celebrate him. Though he was known to be soft-spoken, Swaminathan could be persistent. Over a career spanning 7 decades, he steadily built one of history's most formidable careers in crop science. He got his shoes muddy in farms. He strained his eyes in laboratories. He served in senior executive positions in Indian government agencies. He was part of agricultural research institutes. He took part in prestigious commissions, both at home and abroad. He rebuked pessimistic projections about India. During the mid-1900s, experts said low yields and high population growth would be India's downfall, that it would lead to mass starvation. Swaminathan said people claimed Indians had no future unless a thermonuclear bomb kills them. Others said Indians would die like sheep going to a slaughterhouse. To that, Swaminathan said, "We decided this would not happen." And he saw it through. You see, post-independence, Indian agriculture was not very productive. Years of colonial rule had stunted the growth. During the first 2 decades of independence, Swaminathan made massive scientific contributions, both on and off the field. In the early 1960s, India's wheat production was languishing. It stood at about 10 million tons. Rice production was suffering too. India's output was 35 million tons. This forced the country to import huge quantities of grain. In 1966, imports crossed 10 million tons. Why was the production so bad? The wheat and rice crops in India were not high yielding. And this is where Swaminathan came in. He specialized in crop genetics and breeding. He worked on improving the variety of crop, and it had a wide impact. This is what led to the Green Revolution. Swaminathan introduced a new kind of rice and wheat plant. High-yield varieties of paddy and wheat were developed, and the rest, as they say, is history. Wheat production doubled in just a few years. By the end of the decade, it had crossed 20 million tons, and today, India is a farming powerhouse. Its entire economy is supported by agriculture. Agriculture contributes to 16% of India's GDP today. And India is one of the world's largest and most diversified food producers. It's the second largest producer of rice, wheat, oilseeds, fruits, vegetables, sugarcane, and cotton. In the last 1 year, India has produced some 330 million tons of food grain. The wheat output alone was a record 112 million tons. In August, India's rice production stood at 134 million tons. Since the Green Revolution, India has achieved food grain self-sufficiency. Today, India accounts for 40% of the global rice trade. By 2030, agriculture could contribute around $600 billion to India's GDP. That's a 50% increase since 2020. And one can't help but say that the catalyst behind all of this was Swaminathan. Within a span of decades, India went on from depending on grain imports to becoming one of the world's leading food producers and exporters. Swaminathan has inspired generations of scientists the world over. His Green Revolution was not just a scientific achievement, it was a survival strategy.